Hello and welcome to Newsline. I'm Hoàng Anh.
And my name is Hai Nam. First, we take a look at the headlines for this hour on Vietnam Today. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính starts official visit to Kuwait.
And then later on, Vietnamese fishermen say no to IUU fishing.
Global craftsmanship shines at international festival. We begin with Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính official visit to Kuwait at the invitation of his Kuwaiti counterpart Sheikh Ahmad Abdullah Al Ahmad Al Sabah. Accompanied by his spouse and a senior delegation, the Vietnamese Prime Minister landed in Kuwait on November 16th to start his two-day visit to the Middle Eastern country.
Kuwait is currently Vietnam's largest trading and investment partner among the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) countries. Bilateral trade reached $7.3 billion in 2024. During the visit, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính is expected to meet with the Emir of Kuwait and the Crown Prince, hold bilateral talks with the Kuwaiti Prime Minister, and have meetings with ministers and major business leaders. The Vietnamese government leader will also visit several socio-economic establishments and deliver a speech at the Kuwait Diplomatic Institute. This is the first visit by a high-level Vietnamese leader to Kuwait in 16 years and comes as the two countries prepare to mark 50 years of diplomatic ties in January 2026, contributing to elevating the bilateral relationship to new heights. Furthermore, Vietnam is also stepping up cooperation with partners across the Middle East and Africa. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính and his spouse's official visit to Kuwait and Algeria, his attendance at the G20 summit and activities in South Africa will all carry major bilateral and multilateral significance. These engagements reaffirm Vietnam's foreign policy of independence, diversification, and multilateral cooperation, strengthening political trust, deepening friendship, and expanding ties across many sectors.
The Nghi Son refinery and petrochemical complex stands as a flagship symbol of Vietnam-Kuwait Investment Corporation, with Kuwait contributing up to $3.5 billion.
It currently provides 40 to 45% of the nation's fuel supply.
Beyond energy cooperation, Kuwait is also Vietnam's leading trade partner in the Middle East and an important official development assistance provider. Meanwhile, Vietnam's partnership with Algeria and South Africa continue to grow. South Africa is Vietnam's largest trading partner in Africa, and Algeria holds strong potential, especially in oil and gas projects involving Vietnamese enterprises. This visit is expected to unlock new bilateral opportunities across all sectors.
Vietnam enjoys strong and steadily expanding ties with Kuwait, Algeria, and South Africa. All four countries are entering new phases of development. Middle Eastern and African partners view Vietnam as a model of successful reform and responsible international engagement, providing an important basis for building political trust and shared values.
The Prime Minister's visit not only elevates relations with the three countries, but also helps shape a new vision for cooperation between Vietnam and the broader Middle East Africa region, built on trust, sustainability, and a shared prosperous future.
On November 16th, Vice State President Võ Thị Ánh Xuân attended the 2025 National Great Unity Festival at Vĩnh Long Province. She extended her congratulations and praised the outstanding achievements of the local people in cultural development and socio-economic progress. Emphasizing that the country is entering a new phase of development, the Vice State President called on party committees, local administrations, and Fatherland Front bodies at all levels in Vĩnh Long Commune to continue promoting the tradition of patriotism, solidarity, and diligence of the people, so as to support sustainable local development.
On Sunday morning in Yên Nan Commune, Gia Lai Province, Deputy Prime Minister Hồ Quốc Dũng attended the groundbreaking ceremony for 7 new integrated boarding schools in border areas. With a total investment of about $57 million, the project will accommodate more than 7,000 students. Once completed, the schools will provide modern, welcoming learning environments that ensure equal educational opportunities for children in border areas. On Saturday, the Deputy Prime Minister also witnessed the handover of nearly $380,000 to Gia Lai Province to support residents affected by Typhoon Kameji in restoring their livelihoods.
Major national infrastructure projects are now considered strategic drivers of development. Under the current schedule, more than 60 projects across Vietnam are expected to open on December 19th. The date is a key milestone towards completing 3,000 kilometers of expressways. With just over a month to go, this is a critical period for accelerating progress on major works, and that momentum is being felt nationwide.
This air traffic control tower is the most critical component of Phase 2 of the Long Thanh International Airport project, and construction is now running nonstop. At this stage, more than 85% of the planned work has been completed.
Even with the unfavorable weather at the end of the year, our contractors have remained fully focused. We've kept 5 construction clusters running, with 3 to 4 shifts, and worked straight through midday.
Key facilities needed for flight operations are now in the final stages of construction. The main building work is complete. Equipment installations are entering their last phase. Everything is being prepared for the first technical flight on December 19th.
We're working closely with the contractors on installation and final preparations, and on securing the necessary approvals from the Civil Aviation Authority of Vietnam. We've put together a detailed plan to support the test flight schedule, with technical inspections on December 15th and technical flights on December 19th.
The Airports Corporation of Vietnam is also working to increase on-site construction volume by more than 20% each month. 3 out of 15 packages have been completed, and several others have reached about 90%. Many packages have been accelerated by 3 to 5 months. For the North-South Expressway expansion's Chao Bo, My Son section, 8 months of construction have brought all bridge structures to completion. More than 10 kilometers of weak soil treatment is now finished. Contractors are targeting delivery of the entire project 8 months ahead of schedule.
Our biggest advantage here was having the full site ready from day one, so we could start work immediately. We mobilized all our equipment to push ahead with every section.
Once the land was handed over, we coordinated with local authorities and secured permits to open the quarry. We've already stockpiled enough materials for several phases of the work. Our goal is to have it open to traffic by April 30th, 2026.
Coming up next, Vietnamese fishermen say no to IUU fishing.
And then global craftsmanship shines at international festival. Squid fishing is the main livelihood of fishermen in Bình Sơn commune of Quảng Ngãi province. However, months-long trips at sea increase the risk of illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing due to inadequate equipment and limited legal knowledge. To address this challenge, Bình Sơn fishermen have proactively applied technology and complied with regulations on fishing grounds, thereby contributing to the sustainable development of the local fishing industry.
This ship is preparing to go to the Spratly Island Sea to fish for squid. In the past, fishermen went to the sea mainly based on their experience and intuition, but now each trip is planned according to boundaries, coordinates, and strict regulations on fishing areas.
Previously, I didn't know, so I went to foreign waters, such as Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines. Wherever there was squid, we followed it. But now, the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment have set clear boundaries, so we follow them and fish only in the permitted sea areas.
Binh Sơn Commune currently has 132 boats fishing for squid. The fishing sea area is vast and borders many countries in the region. When encountering big waves or strong currents, small fishing boats or basket boats can drift beyond the Vietnamese sea boundary.
When we go squid fishing on basket boats, we have full equipment: marine VHF radio, life buoys, and the boat's main VHF radio. We don't want to drift into another country's waters. But if there is a storm and we do drift, we will contact the mother ship, which will pick us up. We will not stay or fish in another country's sea or territory.
We follow the principles set by the party and the state, which require fishermen not to encroach on foreign waters. I've also committed to that.
To limit risk, each basket boat is equipped with a positioning buoy directly connected to the boat. Thanks to this, the captain always knows the exact location of each basket boat and can proactively manage dangerous situations. By protecting the sea with efforts and a sense of responsibility, Binh Sơn fishermen are contributing to the sustainable exploitation of seafood, maintaining a green and clean fishing ground, and supporting international cooperation.
More than 200,000 fish fry have been released into the Hope River to restore aquatic resources in the Mekong Delta. The species released include giant barb, giant pacasias, mud carp, freshwater puffer, freshwater dolphin fish, and giant freshwater prawns. For years, these releases have been carried out regularly with strong support from local people, organizations, and individuals. The Ministry of Agriculture and Environment calls on provinces to continue releasing fish fry, protect and restore aquatic resources, and contribute to local socio-economic development and biodiversity conservation. From November 14th to 18th, the 2025 International Craft Village Conservation and Development Festival takes place at the Thang Long Imperial Citadel, covering an area of more than 4,000 square meters. The event has brought together artisans from over 30 countries along with thousands of other farm craft villages nationwide. The goal is to preserve and promote Vietnam's traditional cultural identity, honor artisans, and at the same time showcase craft village products to international friends and expand commercial value.
These are conical heads made of tropical almond leaves by artisan Võ Ngọc Hùng from Huế City. He brought all the products that he had left after the recent flash floods. After just one day, more than half of that were sold out. Hùng is one of thousands of artisans from craft villages across the country participating in the 2025 International Craft Village Conservation and Development Festival.
I've displayed my products in many places, but this is the first time I'm attending an international festival, so what I bring must be more distinctive and diverse. I want to contribute my part, first to spread our craft across the country, and second to learn from the international artisans.
This year's festival is not only a showcase of refined craftsmanship, but also a space for cultural exchange, learning, commercial connection, where each conical hat becomes a storyteller, a thread linking culture, people, and nature. This is also a rare opportunity for artisans to personally demonstrate their skills and guide visitors in experiencing craft village heritage.
You value it that much more, knowing how hard it is to make. You have beautiful crafts here.
More than 70 artisans from 30 countries are also joining local artisans, bringing unique handmade products from all corners of the world.
My coat, it's Uzbek national dresses, like the chapan. Our special handicraft, it's like this. Only in this Uzbekistan, only in this region, doing like these hats. It's stitching, one-side stitching. It's very small, it's very hard to work. All of our products, it's showing our culture, Uzbek culture.
Notably, during the festival, the World Crafts Council continues its evaluation process to officially recognize two more craft villages, Sơn Đồng and Chuyên Mỹ, into the World Crafts Cities network, alongside Bát Tràng and Vạn Phúc. This is a strong affirmation of Hanoi's position as a creative hub for global cultural and handicraft exchange.
Craftsmanship remains vital for a country in the modern world, serving as a cornerstone for cultural identity, a driver of sustainable economic development, and a source of innovation and social cohesion. To gain a better understanding of the story of both preserving and promoting traditional craft villages, our reporter had a conversation with Ms. Jude van der Merwe, chair of the Asia-Pacific Crafts Alliance.
Thank you for joining the interview. There will be two more Vietnamese craft villages being considered to become the member of the World Craft City Network. Can you share with me their evaluation process and selection criteria for this?
We'll talk about that because they're both very, very good examples of maintaining traditional craft, looking after the artisans, creating new work, and creating a market. A continuation of that culture that's really important, but really the purpose is to help to bring a focus on craft. That's something that's been lost for a lot of villages and a lot of places. Fortunately, that hasn't been lost in Vietnam. The framework of the Craft City program assists the villages or the cities that are awarded to be able to actually leverage government support and investment.
So what would be the key factor for a craft village to maintain its traditional core value but still successfully reaching global markets?
So there are a lot of criteria. Preservation is one, but also an understanding of that circular economy, which is what creates a true craft practice. The ways in which people use the raw materials, use them wisely and well, dispose of waste carefully in the environment for the sales of those beautiful objects to come back into the village to assist people to learn, to get more education, to get more design skills, get more product development skills. This microeconomy produces good for the village.
From the international perspective, how can you evaluate the potential and the identity of Vietnamese craft villages in the global handicraft network?
I think they're doing exactly what needs to be done. Vietnamese people seem committed to an improvement. That will bring its own improvement. The People's Committee decided to invest in this new Nets Festival next year in 2026. I think they're looking to triple or quadruple that next year. An incredible opportunity for Hanoi to become the hub for craft in all of Southeast Asia. That's the big vision, but I think it's absolutely possible.
Okay, once again, thank you so much for your great insight.
Thank you so much. It's been really good fun.
You know, there's something about Vietnamese music that just stays with you. Simple melodies, familiar stories, yet they linger in your mind. And lately, Nam, it's been so fun to see those same songs popping up in places far beyond Vietnam.
Exactly, Hoàng Anh. And suddenly you see choirs, travelers, and even a whole group of foreigners learning Vietnamese folk songs. And they are not just humming along, they are studying seriously. And today we are looking at how Vietnamese songs are being embraced, learned, and even performed by international choirs in the most unexpected places.
And now here's a fun little game for you, Nam.
Challenge accepted, Hoàng Anh.
Can you guess what's the name of this song?
Sure.
Tình bằng có cái trống cơm, khen ai khéo vỗ, ôi mấy bông là nền bông, ôi mấy bông là nền bông.
Well, I guess I'm not a good singer, but this is too obvious. It's trống cơm. It's the song about traditional musical drum in Vietnam, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that we all heard and even sung that a song 1,000 times since childhood. But here's the interesting part. This isn't being sung the way we usually hear it. It's being performed by an American choir, learning every playful twist of the melody. And right here, Dương Nhật Trường, a young Vietnamese musician, has been teaching an American choir to sing this folk tune Through that rhythm, it expresses love for his homeland and the beauty of Vietnamese culture. And next, we have a viral video shows foreign tourists in Bắc Ninh not just watching one hot performance, but joining in and singing alongside the performers. It turns out they are actually singing in a full choir from Lichtenberg, Berlin. And after watching the show, they perform Bèo Giạt Mây Trôi in choral style together with a local artist. If you didn't see their faces, you might easily mistake them for a local group. Their pronunciation and note bending were surprisingly accurate. And finally, this next clip captures a choir performing Bài Ca Tôm Cá. What makes it truly beautiful is the collaboration of members from 22 different countries all come together to celebrate a Vietnamese song with energy and joy. Seeing artists from different cultures join voices for a Vietnamese tune shows how music can connect cultures in a way words alone cannot.
Well, Heinz, those are the beautiful melodies. And as you can see, when many people from different places try to sing Vietnamese songs and really put effort into it, it's quite touching, isn't it? And maybe we don't notice it every day, but Vietnamese folk music carries a warmth that resonates with people. Vietnamese music isn't just preserved, it is being shared, learned, and loved around the world. Coming up next, EU reaches provisional 2026 budget deal.
And then later on, 3D bioprinter for organoid production. Newsline will now continue with international updates. So Nam, let's start with the new related to Ukraine, shall we?
Sure, Hoàng Anh. And amid ongoing hostilities showing no signs of abating, Finnish President Alexander Stubb emphasized that Europe must remain persistent and united despite the political difficulties in Kiev.
In an interview with the Associated Press on Saturday, Finnish President Alexander Stubb said Europe would need a great deal of Finnish trademark resilience to get through the winter months, as the regional security situation remains complicated. According to him, a ceasefire in Ukraine is unlikely before spring.
I'm not very optimistic about achieving a ceasefire or the beginning of peace negotiations, at least this year. I mean, perhaps if we get something going by February, March, that would be good.
The Finnish president noted that any path toward peace in Ukraine must focus on three key elements: guaranteeing Ukraine's security, advancing economic reconstruction, and addressing outstanding territorial issues. As several European countries grapple with drone incursions and acts of sabotage from external sources, Europe is confronting broader forms of destabilization beyond the conflict in Ukraine. The most effective response, he said, is to stay calm, avoid overreaction, and maintain resilience, determination, and vigilance.
The European Union has reached a provisional agreement on its 2026 budget, a key step that lays the groundwork for finalizing the bloc's spending plans for the coming year amid ongoing economic and security pressures. Under the agreement, the EU's total budget commitments for 2026 are set at around 192.8 billion euros, an increase of 6.6 billion euros compared with initial forecasts. The additional funds will primarily support the bloc's strategic priorities. Notably, 715 million euros have been allocated to a contingency reserve designed to respond to unexpected developments. Reaching an early consensus on the budget is expected to help the EU preserve financial stability and push ahead with its economic and security objectives, particularly amid an increasingly uncertain global environment.
Natural disasters have inflicted massive losses on the world's agricultural sector, with an estimated $3.26 trillion lost over the past 33 years. This amounts to about $99 billion annually, equivalent to roughly 4% of the global agricultural GDP. According to the report by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, also known as FAO, between 1991 and 2023, phenomena such as droughts, floods, pests, or marine heatwaves destroyed 4.6 billion tons of grains, nearly 3 billion tons of fruits and vegetables, and 900 million tons of meat and dairy. The Asia region suffered the most, with losses totaling $1.53 trillion. The FAO report also highlights the role of digital technology in monitoring risk, providing early warnings, and supporting farmers in proactive disaster response.
The 27th China International High-Tech Fair in Shenzhen has been drawing significant attention, not just for its scale, but also an impressive display from the field of biomedical engineering. Among this year's highlights is a new 3D bioprinter capable of mass-producing organoid structures to support drug research and development.
This groundbreaking 3D bioprinter has been brought to the fair by a team from Tsinghua University in Shenzhen. This technology allows scientists to cultivate a heart-shaped organoid in just about 8 days. That organoid actually capable of beating and has significant value for medical research.
People take different medications, and these medications affect our organs, including the heart. Using a beating heart organoid, we can test whether the daily medications we take are safe for the heart. In the future, we will use new technologies such as organoids to develop drugs for humans.
The 3D bioprinter uses bioink made from functional cells differentiated from pluripotent stem cells. It is the world's first fully automated bioprinter designed to mass-produce organoids, capable of creating more than 100,000 organoids per day, a figure that leads the industry by current global standards.
And that is all the updates we have for this hour on Vietnam Today.
Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Hello and welcome to Global Insight, where we deep dive into global issues that's shaping our world. I'm Brian Pham. Now, tens of thousands of delegates from around the world have converged on Belém, a city nestled in Brazil's Amazon rainforest, for the 30th United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP30. And this year's summit faces some of the strongest headwinds in recent memory, amid intensifying climate crisis and the increasingly extreme weather events. This is Global Insight, and today we will talk about how COP, as the world's only global platforms for coordinated climate action, can bridge divisions and find common ground to tackle the planet's climate change crisis. But first, let's take a look at some of the biggest stories from around the world.
US President Donald Trump signed a new spending bill, officially ending the 43-day government shutdown, the longest in the country's history. Earlier, the bill was passed by the House of Representatives with 222 votes in favor and 209 against. With the president's signature, the US government will now remain funded through January 30th. Food assistance programs and salary payments for hundreds of thousands of federal employees will be restored. Following the end of the longest government shutdown in US history, most Asian stock markets opened higher, while gold prices and the US dollar saw mild fluctuations.
The Indian government confirmed that the car explosion near the Red Fort in New Delhi was a serious act of terrorism, killing 8 people and injuring more than 20 others. Speaking after a cabinet meeting, India's Minister of Information and Technology said the government had ordered an investigation to be carried out with the highest speed and professionalism to swiftly identify, arrest, and prosecute those responsible. The administration of Prime Minister Narendra Modi has vowed to track down the forces behind the attack.
Border tensions between Thailand and Cambodia resurfaced as both sides accuse each other of opening fire in a disputed area. Cambodia reports 1 death and 3 injuries, while Thailand claims Cambodian troops fired first and that its forces only issued warning shots. Phnom Penh called for an end to the use of force and urged an independent investigation. Both countries prioritized dialogue to avoid escalation. Thai and Cambodian leaders, with Malaysia's mediation, reaffirmed their commitment to a peaceful resolution and to upholding the ceasefire agreement.
Israel announced that it has reopened the Zikim crossing, connecting to northern Gaza to allow humanitarian aid trucks to enter the area. According to the Israeli military's aid monitoring unit, relief supplies will be delivered by the United Nations and international organizations after security checks. The crossing had been closed since September the 12th, leaving northern Gaza facing severe food shortages. Israel has also facilitated fuel deliveries and restored electricity links to support 2 desalination plants, providing drinking water for Palestinians. However, reconstruction remains a major challenge, with more than 80% of Gaza's power grid destroyed and infrastructure and equipment damaged, estimated at $728 million.
Russia announced that its Federal Security Service, FSB, prevented a plot to seize a MiG-31 fighter jet equipped with Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. Moscow also accused Ukrainian and British intelligence of orchestrating the plan to provoke a confrontation between Russia and NATO. According to the FSB, the alleged plotters approached Russian pilots, offering $3 million and Western citizenship to lure them to fly to a NATO airbase in Romania, where the aircraft could have been shot down. Ukraine and Romania have denied Russia's claims, while the UK has yet to comment on the incident.
Despite 3 decades of global negotiations, countries will not prevent warming from exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius, the main goal of the Paris Agreement brokered a decade ago. Instead, The world is on track for an extreme 2.3 to 2.5 degrees Celsius of warming, according to the United Nations Environment Programme. Meanwhile, climate-induced disasters, from record-breaking heat waves and wildfires to devastating floods, have grown more frequent and severe across continents. After decades of pledges and annual summits, from Kyoto in 1997 to Paris in 2015 and Sharm el-Sheikh in 2022, the planet keeps getting hotter and pressure on governments and big business to act, not just talk, has never been greater.
Now can COP30 bridge the divide between nations, prioritizing economic growth and the urgent need for a collective climate target? And will the climate finance goal agreed at COP29 finally mobilize the resources developing countries need? And in Global Insight today, we turn to Dao Mai-chi, Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Economics and Climate Change. Thank you for being here with us.
It's my pleasure.
Now, we know that the consensus from COP28 was to transition away from fossil fuels. However, some two-thirds of countries have not yet announced or submitted their pledge, missing the UN deadline in February and also extension to September. So how can COP30 coincide the conflict between national economic development and the collective climate target?
So first of all, I think it's very important that we see COP as kind of like a boardroom meetings amongst global climate leaders where decisions are converged, but that's only for 2 weeks. And then all of the very difficult continuous work is conducted during the other 50 weeks of the years. And so with that being said, I think there are a number of aspects that should really be considered carefully. So first of all, there should be techno-economic considerations. So let's take mitigation and then the power sector, for example. We think about countries, transitioning into a decarbonized power sector. They would have to adopt flexibility resources. They would have to do grid upgrades. They would have to adopt grid codes so that they can ensure reliability and affordability. And then that will allow them to move away from fossil fuel-based resources. And so that is something that allows the power sector to be functional, economical, while still keeping to the climate targets. And in order to deal with all of that, then they would also need finance, which is also an important aspect that is discussed at every COP. So in our example, in the power sector, there has to be a meaningful reskilling and a mobilization of the workforce, and at the same time ensuring that there are energy subsidies and incentives so that low-income communities can also co-benefit and there's social protection for them as we navigate these very important transitions.
Now, the new collective quantified goals on climate finance, or NCQG, agree upon the COP29 aims to push for a $1.3 trillion a year in climate finance, adopt new measures to help countries adapt and advance a just transition to cleaner economies. And in your opinion, is this climate finance goal achievable?
The question of number is always a complicated question. I think it's achievable, but probably also a very important question to discuss is on what criteria would you say that that deployment of the finance is successful, right? Because it's not just going to be viewed as just one check, but it should be viewed as a system of targets. And so the finance has to be channeled into the right places by the right people. And so I think that in order for it to be achievable and for it to be meaningful, then there has to be the highlighted role of MDBs, so multilateral development banks, that are able to de-risk projects, especially international projects. So for example, very recently, we have the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank initiative where they are looking to propel the financing of the ASEAN power grid. So that's one example of how the roles of MDB can be highlighted and play a part in this broader financing schemes that allows for meaningful transition.
And the NCQG, as you said, also pushes for a minimum of $300 billion annually, specifically for developing countries' climate efforts. So is this a goal enough?
When we talk about developing countries, we have to also consider a very important element, which is the critical infrastructure that needs to be built for resilience, which protects and also helps developing countries to be less vulnerable to climate change. But doing that is very expensive. So in my opinion, I think that it's important to look at the 300 billion figure and look at that as kind of a floor, as a public anchor, so that we can draw in more resources. And I think in order to do that, then we would need to have a few criteria. So first of all, I think there has to be effective channeling of these finances into the appropriate project. And then another element is time. So you want quick disbursement of this very important climate finance, and at the same time, because these are developing countries and many of these measures have not been piloted, so there's always a process of piloting and then scaling up. So we would want to be quick on that timeline as well. And then I think one other element that is important for developing countries is that you would want an aligned, transparent data system with aligned tracking protocols to ensure that there's transparency as to how and who these finances are being disbursed.
What reforms should COP30 adopt beyond just raising numbers to ensure that climate finance reaches the most vulnerable first?
Because financing for climate project and especially international project can get complicated. So what we want is to have a template so that it's applicable everywhere, and one finance project can really be the template, the blueprint for another finance project. As we look 10 years in the future and we look at all the things that we are trying to achieve, even planning out from now and starting a project 10 years from now. Take Vietnam, for example, we're looking at net zero by 2050, right? Right now it's 2025, so that's more than 2 decades from now. Geopolitics change, situations change. So for example, in the last year or two, the cost of solar in combination with storage solution has dropped dramatically, and probably even more so than most experts would have expected. So that's an economic decision that you can make, right? And then following that, you can make other decisions in terms of techno-economic, in terms of policy. But really, this is something that a country can be more active, and also, if they can secure that, then they also increase their energy security while being less dependent on conditional assistance.
As the first week of COP30 drew to a close in the gateway to the Amazon, negotiators wrapped up talks with a mix of both cautious optimism and frustrations. Bright spots included the Loss and Damage Fund's first funding call, operationalized in record time, and multilateral development banks' pledge of over $26 billion for adaptation. The BLM's declarations on information's integrity, signed by 10 nations, marked a historic stand against climate disinformation. Delegate also brought to the table several tech-led solutions to tackle the global climate change.
I feel like this is a COP where we have an opportunity to really go over some of the decisions and the discussions in regards to achieving the 1.5, which now may possibly be 1.8 or even 2.5 degrees. I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for all the stakeholders to come to the table to really talk about what it is everybody can do to reduce the emissions within the context of their own nations, but also what other stakeholders like private sector can do, and also talking about discussions such as the role of technology. I feel like this is probably one of the first COPs that has put technology at the front.
Underscoring the opportunity, COP30 offers for both the public and private sectors to invest in scalable, effective innovations. Delegates also stressed the need to redefine the energy transition to make it just from start to finish.
I come from an area that's affected by lithium mining, so we fight for demarcation and for an energy transition that's actually fair and green, as the way it's happening now is green for you, but red for us. For you, it's lithium. For us, it's waste, and we need this logic to be different.
So I really urge those that are not coming to the table to really step up. And then for those that are setting bold, ambitious goals and not doing anything, this is an opportunity again to really throw some budget into the climate agenda and really step up on achieving those bold, ambitious goals.
The Amazon's humid pulse underscores the stakes. Belem's first week showed that the world can collaborate, but time to act is evaporating.
And now observers are advocating for the establishment of the Belem Action Mechanisms, or BAM. How significant is this initiative for bridging the financial and trust deficit between different regions in the world?
I think particularly at Belem, we are looking at also how it ties in with other important elements, such as, let's say, the 300 billion figure or the 1.3 trillion figure. But we also should look at how it ties in with other things that were important at previous COPs. So, for example, the fund for responding to loss and damages. That is also something that were previously discussed and kind of on the trajectory to go from like a slogan / a promise into an actionable program with real finances. So I think that it's important for that to kind of be in an essential framework that connects the other important elements.
Now, given the UN Secretary General's call for a decade of acceleration and delivery to prevent overshooting the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase, what concrete measures should the final agreement include to ensure that the goal retain its priority rather than fading into a symbolic or procedural commitment?
Yes, that's $1 million question at every COP, right? I think that if you talk about a decade, right, we talk about a decade of growth and, targets and sustainable development with actions on climate change. Again, there's always a question of finance and how to improve the transparency and the reliability of how this finance is being used. And also, I think very importantly, there should be standards for results of where the finance is channeled into. So kind of like KPIs. So for example, if you invest into climate change adaptation, then how many people is covered under an early warning system, right? That a finance program funds, right? Or how many schools are flood-proof? Very specific things that you can do and very specific transparent measures to measure the impact of these finances. And as we know, developing countries, they all have very, very unique needs. It's very case by case. So I think highlighting the needs and trying to find solutions that are able to combine both, satisfying their unique requirements with connecting them to regional and international cooperative goals is going to be very key to having that continuity across every COP in the next decade.
And now to understand the mood on the ground and the concrete opportunities for Vietnam and Belem, let's turn to our VTV correspondent, Tung Thư. Tung Thư, welcome to Global Insight.
Thank you, Brian. I'm here in Berlin, where the Osmorphic is charged with a mixed urgency and cautious optimism. The negotiations are intense, but the focus and tangible support mechanism for nations like Vietnam is stronger than ever.
And now we have discussed the just transition framework and Vietnam's reliance on coal steel powers, much of its industry, which present a social and economic hurdle. And what specific mechanisms or pledges are emerging from these negotiations that would help Vietnam safeguard livelihood and reskill its workforce during the inevitable phase down of coal power?
That is a critical question, Brian. Vietnam moves away from coal with undoubtings have a major social defect, especially on the workforce. Reports indicate that between 77,000 and 111,000 workers are directly employed in the coal sector, with many more depending on related industries. Studies from the international labor organizations and local experts highlight that low-skilled miners and operations staff face too high risk of jobs losing and coal production declining. The challenge is that all less skilled workers will find it challenging to successfully transition as renewable energy demands entirely different skill sets. while the international partners, including the World Bank, stress the necessity of a targeted, returning, and progressive social safety net. Current exports in Vietnam are largely freshman and insufficient. For a transition to be justly just, we need collaborative and coordinated action and significantly stronger support to manage this large-scale labor displacement.
Now that's focus on implementation and social metric is essential. My second question relates to the youth agenda and the accelerating action. The UN Secretary General has called for a decade of delivery beyond political pledges. So what concrete non-financial outcomes is Vietnam looking for at COP30 that can directly empower grassroots youth organizations to drive the shift toward decentralized clean energy solutions?
The youth component is gaining significant traction here. Vietnam delegation alongside key developments partners like UNDP is prioritizing access to visitor and capacity building platforms. They are pushing for commitment on open sources data and technology transfer specific to small-scale renewable energy like rooftop solar and microgrid solutions. According to a recent study by the Institute of Energy Decentralized, solar could contribute over 15% of Vietnam's electricity capacity by 2030. The expectation from COP30 is not just for technology itself, but for simplified licensing and regulatory frameworks. This would empower young entrepreneurs and local cooperatives to actually install and manage the clean solution, directly driving the national and the sea targets from the ground up.
Now, simplified frameworks can open source data that is a powerful angle for acceleration. Tung Thư, thank you for those crucial updates from Belém. And now let's bring this discussion closest to home and analyze how climate change is specifically affecting Vietnam.
Vietnam, one of the world's most climate vulnerable nations, has endured a brutal year of natural disasters in 2025. Ranked among the top countries at climate risk by the World Bank, the Southeast Asian nation so far faced 13 typhoons this year. Floods and rain brought about by these events have claimed over 200 lives and inflicted $1.4 billion in damages. Scientists say the intensity of these events bears the unmistakable imprint of global warming.
It's a complicated relationship, but we also find that, that maybe the typhoons maybe are 15%, 20% wetter than normal. Now, that doesn't sound like very much, but if you are, just at a critical level of flooding, 20% more rain can make a huge difference. So the damage, just like for wind, the damage goes up really very, very, very quickly. Even for what seems like really small changes, there are thresholds in the system where people cope and infrastructure copes, and then suddenly they don't. And I think what we're seeing here is that we are just over those thresholds, and then people and infrastructure is not coping.
Vietnam is pivoting. The country will need 55 to 92 billion US dollars this decade to adapt to what experts call a new era of climate extremes. Vietnam also submitted its updated National Adaptation Plan, a critical milestone, while finalizing a new NDC that scrutinizes every economic sector from power to hard-to-abate industries. The country's dual-track approach, urgent adaptation today, decarbonization tomorrow, seeks to address the triple challenges: grow fast, stay secure, and go green.
Now, Vietnam faces the twin challenge of driving rapid economic growth while meeting ambitious climate change commitments. So how would the outcomes of COP30, specifically in areas like technology transfer and just transition frameworks, provide tangible support mechanisms to support the country in its development trajectory?
Yeah, so you mentioned two very important things, technology transfer. So that's kind of the techno-economic aspect of things that we discussed. And then the other thing is the social aspects of this transition, which is like social protection, ensuring that there are replicable practices of equitable transition for local communities or indigenous communities, or just people in, vulnerable situations like low-income workers. Let's say if we say that we transition away from a type of fossil fuel, then within that sector, there may be a lot of low-income workers. So what do we do with them, right? So all of these things are things that Vietnam can look at international examples, and then also kind of import that, international expertise, get the advice, but also adapt it to the national context. Adaptation is an area in Vietnam where we can actually improve our understanding and the modeling of applying the adaptation-based tools and how that would, translate into socioeconomic costs that may be avoided by us adapting the adaptation.
Now, the demographic at the COPs often includes young peoples who demand greater ambitions and accountability from decision makers. So how can the outcomes of COP30 be structured to empower youth voices and organizations to accelerate climate action, both through international advocacies and in driving the efforts at the grassroots level in nations like Vietnam?
Youth globally, and then Vietnam in particular, as I've been working with a number of youth on this topic of climate change action, we can see that youth in Vietnam are actually being very proactive these days and have a great need to contribute to climate action, but they do face a number of challenges. So actually, we conducted a report with UNDP last year, published a report that we found that youth in Vietnam really wanted to contribute to climate action, but lacked the knowledge, do not have the perspective on, climate actions can actually contribute and they can co-benefit from these climate transition processes, and also they would want to see a channel where they can actually contribute what their unique talents are. And so I think those are some of the things that COP can actually help, right? So if a young person is trying to establish a climate initiative or like a climate project, climate-based activity, then there could be a part of the financing scheme that is being discussed at COP that could be dedicated to youth. And the unique trait of that funneling of the finance has to be unique to youth as well. Ministry of Agriculture and Environment has been very supportive with youth participation at COP, as was my experience coming into COP28 2 years ago. What I do want to see even more from that is maybe somewhat more structured participation so that they can, learn from the delegation, they can assist with whatever unique contribution they can have, and they can be part of the process and eventually transition into a collaborative system that really propels Vietnam's climate actions forward.
Well, thank you for your insight and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for the invite.
As negotiators race toward the November 21st deadline, one truth cuts through the conference halls of Belém. The planet cannot wait for perfect consensus. We have examined the missing pledges, the trillion-dollar finance chasms, the proposed action mechanisms, and the urgent calls worldwide for the transitions. The 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold is no longer a future warning. It's the reality facing this year COP30. And that's it for this week's edition of Global Insight. We will be back next week with more story that's shaping our worlds. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.
The Vietnam Today mobile app, the online platform to watch Vietnam's international television channel. Accessible across all devices, the free platform reaches millions of viewers in every corner of the globe. Here's how to get the app. Step 1. Open the App Store or Google Play on your device. Step 2. Search for the Vietnam Today app. Step 3. Tap